Welcome to Self-Critic Reviews, and today Self-Critic is gonna review Mindhunter's Season 2. The first season was amazing, so I had high expectations. Spoilers ahead. So I had high expectations, and the season did not really let me down. It was just as terrific and enjoyable, if not more. But despite the season being phenomenal, it had a few flaws. And not even a few really. Just one big giant flaw looming over the show, and I feel like the writers don't even realize it. And before singing praises, let me get the nagging negativity out of me first. The flaw I'm referring to is the screen time dedicated to Wendy's and bartender's romance. And these scenes were so bad. Oh my god. Horrible on so many levels. Absolutely pathetic. And not only because they have no place in a series about serial killers, but also because the writing and the dialogue were excruciatingly awkward, lazy, and unbefitting of a series of this caliber. I would understand if it were just a couple of scenes, like maybe the awkward tension between Holden and the receptionist in Atlanta. But there were multiple scenes with no end in sight, completely breaking the storyline's flow. I get that they're trying to humanize the protagonist, including her, but there are better ways to do it, like what the writers did with Tench's family, for instance. But it does in general follow a pattern that Mindhunter is quite terrible at writing romance. Last season, for example, it was Ford who had a romantic relationship. And call me crazy, but in the beginning I thought the chemistry between the two was great. And the dialogue between them in the pilot was incredible. And it was actually what exactly got me really hooked on this TV show in the first place. However, slowly but surely, the writing of the relationships aspect deteriorated and became more of a hindrance than an advantage, and observing the couple started to become a drag. And I know people on Reddit hated the girl's character last season, and if they thought Debbie was bad, I'm dreading to think what they think of Kay, the bartender. But other than this blemish, the season was incredible. Especially the first half, with so many things happening and getting restructured. The FBI unit got a new boss, who, contrary to the previous boss, facilitates our protagonist's job. In a way, he's very conveniently written and his purpose in the plot is clear. But in my opinion, the characterization is in the spirit of the show. While he isn't a deep character, he is portrayed as slightly cunning and more than meets the eye, as evidenced in the scenes when he's telling Wendy and Tench individually to keep an eye on Holden. The impression I get is that he's playing them by saying that he has their best interest at heart in order to be at everybody's good sides. But when something really bad and irreversible happens, I'm sure we'll see a different side of him. The way the ethics investigation was dropped was actually sensible writing. The old boss was forced to resign because of the behavioral science unit, and it played out pretty nicely. Especially the revelation itself in a dialogue with Holden. Speaking of Holden, he had a panic attack last season, and this season the doctor told him to be careful and not to provoke it to happen again by doing what he was doing when the panic attack happened. And him having another panic attack after his old boss told him that he had to step down because of him was an appropriate and an emotional scene. I was, however, disappointed that this never happened again afterwards, but I can only assume that this will come into play next season somehow. Last season the show mostly interviewed Ed Kemper, and this season, since the unit received more support from above, there were a lot more serial killers the protagonists interviewed. And in all honesty, every single one of those interviews was mesmerizing, engaging, fantastically written, and amazingly acted. I don't even know what words I can use to describe the elite quality of those scenes. These are not only the primary reason for why Mindhunter is so good, but it's also one of the most captivating scenes on televisions or movies, period. In a way, there isn't anything special in terms of the plot or even depth. It's just dialogue, and actors recreating an image of a real-life serial killer and showcasing their idiosyncrasies and unique features in the limited amount of screen time they get. But man, the resulting output is unbelievable in terms of quality. The dialogue is extremely well constructed, in terms of strategy, vocabulary, and the character's traits. You can truly tell that a lot of effort was put into writing every single line, facial expression, and characterization. And in every single interview, you were able to discern that these individuals aren't just unique because they're so different from normal people, but they also differ a lot from each other in spite of having similar traits, and that this FBI behavioral science unit has a mountain to climb in order to figure them out and analyze their thoughts. As you can see, I'm pretty good at criticizing things, but praising something can be problematic for me. And I just want to say that these interviews are nothing short of incredible. I don't think I've praised anything as highly on this channel before. My favorite interview had to be with William Jr. Pierce, because seeing the guy make up words and sound smart was really funny. And in a way, it's the only type of humor that could fly in this show, and Mindhunter took full advantage of this opportunity. I also really liked the interview with Charles Manson. The actor is actually the same person who played him on Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and he did a phenomenal job here. So don't go telling me that Tarantino couldn't find more screen time for him after seeing him act here. Manson's character was severely underused in Once Upon, period. But yes, this interview was also incredible because of the parallels to Agent Tench's family situation. I don't remember the exact dialogue, but basically, while defending a person who didn't directly kill somebody, it sounded like he was defending his son, who also witnessed a murder. And now I guess is as good time as any to talk about Brian, Bill Tench's adopted son. So ever since the beginning of the show, Mindhunter has been giving us hints that Brian isn't normal and might as well be a serial killer, just like the people Bill and Holden have been interviewing. This was supposed to add an ironic effect. Like, how can you be so good at your job while you cannot even see what's in front of your doorstep? So, the execution of this realization that there is something wrong with their son is one of the layers this show is delving into, and in my opinion, it's beautiful. I do have to admit that this murder was pretty graphic, and I find it highly improbable that it wouldn't be on the news or newspapers, and that Tench would be able to keep it a secret from his boss. It is, however, a small price to pay for what this adds to the show, because this murder is finally justifying Brian's existence. The actress who plays Nancy acts the mother's role unbelievably well, and the scene when she tells Bill she is relieved he isn't their son by blood is extremely sad. After all this worrying and constant protection of Brian, her suddenly flipping on him is, in my opinion, actually quite believable, because she is definitely emotionally unstable. So up until this point, up until the Charles Manson interview, the season has been nearly perfect, which was the first half of the season. The second half focuses mostly on Atlanta child murders and the bureaucracy and politics behind them. And in my opinion, it slowed Mindhunter's pace quite a bit, but I'd be lying if I said this arc wasn't enjoyable. It was amazing too, just not as amazing as the first half. It did well to portray the racism and prejudice towards black people at the time, the lack of enthusiasm and professionalism at solving those murders. At one point, by victim number 11 or so, the show led us to believe that they did not even know there was a connection between certain victims. And if it's true, it's very suspicious. If it weren't based on true events, you bet your ass I'd be on the writer's case now. But it has to be true if the show decided to make a point out of it. Or not. I don't know, I didn't do the research. It's notable how the series stayed relatively unbiased with the killer. Even though the show technically identified him as Wayne Williams, there is a big level of uncertainty that he was involved in all the murders. But for the case to get closed and for the politics, I imagine the police had to attach a perpetrator, so they decided that Wayne Williams is a good choice as any. This decision is understandable, but it's also quite sad, because his confirmed victims don't exactly fit the profile of the rest of the victims. A very interesting case that remains unsolved to this day. So this concludes my thoughts on this brilliant season. Thanks for watching.